Welcome to Accidental Salesforce Admins, the podcast for change makers trying to go from firefighting problem solver to strategic outcomes driven leader. I'm Robert Sur, co-founder and CEO of Delegate. Today, we're diving into the rhythms lens of our Deep 5 framework, our guide to help you align priorities, perspectives, and processes so you can lead with clarity and confidence. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Rhythms. Isn't that just another fancy word for processes? Nope, not exactly. And quite honestly, that interpretation is why I think so many teams struggle. It's basic thinking. It's mid, as the kids would say. There are levels to this. If you want to be great, not just average, you need to understand that rhythms are deeper than just project checklists, sprint retrospectives, project updates. They're about how your team moves. Think of a great jazz band. It's structure mixed with improvisation working well together. It's discipline and feel. Everyone's in sync, but also they know how to adapt to the moment without missing a beat. Without rhythm, you're basically playing Twister blindfolded with your CFO breathing down your neck, asking for the latest forecast update. Terrible picture. It's chaos. But when you get rhythms right, everything changes. You create trust, stability, adaptability, and more importantly, you set yourself up to be seen as a strategic leader, not just the person who puts out fires all day. So, to keep our jazz theme going, we're going to hit on 3 rhythms that every accidental admin needs to master. 1, keeping up when the beat changes. Number 2, changing the rhythm without losing the flow. And number 3, laying the groove before the melody. So, without further ado, let's jam. All right, let's start with keeping up when the beat changes. Look, anyone can complain about priorities constantly shifting. We've heard it all before. Oh, great, another pivot. Does leadership even know what they're doing? This place is doomed. We're not going anywhere. I get it. I've been there. It's annoying as hell. But guess what? Nobody's hiring you to complain about it. Nobody's paying you to sit there and whine about how unfair the changes are, even if they might be. And here's the kicker. It's not anyone's job to tell you in advance when the beat is about to change. It's your job to keep up. Because the reality is simple. Winning is hard. It's really, really hard. Businesses have to move fast to stay in the game. Priorities shift because they have to. The question is, are you going to adapt or are you going to get left behind? Because real leaders don't fight the change. They figure out how to move with it. They see shifting priorities as an opportunity to stand out. The person who can keep the team aligned when everything else is moving, that's the person leadership starts to trust with more responsibility. I'll give you an example. I worked with a Series B SaaS company, scaling really fast, trying to get $50 million. We were deep into a Salesforce optimization project to ramp up, their SDR team, scale that team up. Then boom, midway through the project, the CEO shifts focus to customer retention being the absolute number one priority. And just like that, everything changed. Emotionally, we wanted to kind of throw our hands up in the air and talk about how unfair this was. And we could have said, hey, that's not in scope. We can't do that. But that doesn't solve anything. Instead, we took a step back, collected ourselves, and like athletes, like winners, we said, okay, cool. Let's learn more. What's the business context driving this change? What does this mean for our current work? And what do we need to make this shift successful? At our next leadership sync, we laid out our options. We were halfway through scaling SDR project. If we pulled the plug now, we'd leave the project half-baked. So we proposed completing this phase within 2 weeks, putting together something that could be used and we could put a bookend on before pivoting to the new retention priorities. We didn't just roll over and quit. We didn't complain. We adjusted because that's what winners do. And because we had regular strategic check-ins, we already understood why retention was suddenly critical. They weren't changing because they were terrible at their job. They weren't changing priorities because it was fun or they wanted to create chaos. There were macroeconomic pressures. There were funding challenges. There were orders from the board. This was about survival. This was about having to continue to adapt and move forward. When you move with changing priorities instead of resisting them, you become a leader who helps the business stay in rhythm with a rapidly changing world. So what's the takeaway here? Set up regular check-ins with leadership, monthly, quarterly, to stay aligned on top priorities. Again, it's not their job to tell you, it's your job to keep up. Always ask, is this still our focus? Is this still our top priority? And ensure your technical backlog reflects that of the business goals. Look, leaders will shift priorities. That's just reality, that's just life. But if you can communicate the impact and facilitate those changes smoothly, you're going to start getting tapped to lead, not just react. All right, let's move on to changing the rhythm without losing the flow. Here's the golden rule. Here's my golden rule. No surprises. No surprises. Nothing erodes trust faster than blindsiding your stakeholders and your leadership team. You want to ruin your credibility really fast? Wait until the last minute to share bad news. Look, I've seen people, teams tank their careers because they sat on information. They were too afraid to share bad news. One Salesforce team I worked with had a critical integration that was tied to highly visible launches that were planned for their upcoming SKO. Weeks before they gathered their entire global sales team, they discovered issues with how their new account plans were supposed to be set up and were supposed to be presented to the entire sales team at the SKO. Instead of flagging this early, they held on to it. They were worried. They wanted to see if they could fix it. They thought they could fix it. They didn't want to be the bearer of bad news. They thought, cross our bridge when we get to it, hoping that they would fix it in time. Spoiler, they didn't, and it blew up. And that kind of thinking is incredibly selfish. Not in like a moral-based way, but in a way that impacts your teammates, in a way that illustrates that your ego is more important than the impact that your actions will have on other people. It shows a lack of self-awareness, and it lacks any semblance of selflessness. And again, this isn't a moral judgment when I say selfishness. This was just a lack of empathy, a lack of understanding of how you prioritizing yourself in that moment impacts your team. Let's compare that to another team that hit a similar snag but handled it differently. They found this issue and reached out to stakeholders about this potential risk months ahead of time. They said, hey, look, here's a situation. Our plan was based on assumptions A, B, and C. They didn't hold up. So here now are our options. Based on those options, here's are the things that we might need to be able to proceed. What can I do to help communicate or mitigate the fallout? It's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. They didn't wait until the weeks or days leading up to the launch date to drop this bombshell. They communicated early, explained the impact, and gave everyone time to adjust. They showed a level of empathy and understanding about the potential ramifications of this, and even offered to lend support. This is what accountability and ownership looks like. This is how you build trust. A few tactical pointers here. For those of you that are running sprints, attack risky items first in your sprint. If you're working on a larger project, attack the risky items first in your project plan. Don't leave the big hairy stuff for last. If you hit a blocker, speak up immediately, even if you don't know yet that it is a blocker, even if it has a potential to be a blocker, speak up immediately. Right? Don't wait until the last minute, or don't wait until it actually is a problem. Even if you think it might be a problem, communicate this. And lastly here, communicate three things: what happened, what you're doing about it, and how it affects downstream plans. Trust is your currency. You can't afford to waste this. I can't emphasize this enough. Communicate early and often, and you'll find that people start trusting you with bigger, more strategic work. You're not going to stop firefighting until you have proven you can help prevent them in the first place. All right, laying the groove before the melody. If there's one thing I learned the hard way, it's this: relationships aren't built when you need them. They're built long, long before that. I used to think I could just walk into a stakeholder's office or desk or get on a call and turn on the charm, get what I needed, and move on. Efficient, transactional, minimum amount of work I need to put in. But let me tell you, people see right through that. And when things inevitably didn't go to plan, or those relationships weren't durable enough to weather that storm. It's not how great teams work. This isn't how great teammates are. Great teams are built on trust, and that trust is built long before the moments of high pressure. It's like jazz. When you've spent time jamming together, learning each other's rhythms, you don't have to overthink it on stage. It just flows. So, how do you create those rhythms of connection with stakeholders? You show up before you need something. I knew someone back in the day who really excelled at this, was incredible at this. She regularly scheduled check ins with key stakeholders, not to talk about deliverables or project status. There was a separate rhythm for that, but just to connect. She'd ask things like, "Hey, how's your family? What's keeping you up at night? How's that hobby going? I remember that you were going on a trip. How was that trip for you? What's the biggest challenge you're facing right now? How can I support you?" Right? She listened. No agenda, no ask. She seemed to know more about everybody than anyone else. Over time, she built real trust. And so when she did hit a rough patch and needed something critical from a stakeholder, guess what? She knew exactly who to go to, and they showed up for her. Not out of obligation, but because they respected her and trusted her. And it wasn't just about work. She had genuine friendships across departments, some that I imagine are absolutely lifelong. And I envied that. Some of my closest friends to this day came from working cross functionally on tough projects. I'm glad I figured it out because it's an incredibly often overlooked gift of what we do. The chance to connect deeply with people, learn from them, and support each other through challenges and have these relationships that reach far beyond the office. So here's your challenge. Start building informal rhythms with key stakeholders, monthly, quarterly coffees, chats, catch ups, whatever. Learn about what they care about, what they're working on, and how you can support them. And keep yourself accountable. It doesn't have to be complicated. Set a goal to reach out to one person each week, right? Take 5 minutes to prepare. Remember what you talked about last time. Remember about the new restaurant that they were going to go to last time. Ask about it, right? This isn't just about having allies when you need them. It's about creating a network of trust, respect, mutual support. This is what being a good teammate looks like. This is how you create a really good team. So when things do go sideways, because they will, those relationships will carry you further than any technical solution or transactional relationship ever could, right? Building those rhythms aren't just smart, it's human. And that's where the real magic happens. Rhythms aren't just about meetings and checklists, they're about creating trust, stability, and adaptability. Yes, you will absolutely need structure, regular check ins, planning sessions, all that jazz. But great leaders also have feel. They know when to pivot, they know when to listen, and how to keep the whole team in sync. So here's my challenge to you: create rhythms that help your team stay aligned with shifting priorities. See this as an opportunity, not an obstacle. Adopt a no surprises mindset. Communicate early and often. Don't just communicate when things are a problem. Communicate even when things might be a problem. And invest in setting rhythms for your relationships before you need them. Until next time, remember, great leaders don't just stick to the script. They master the rhythm and feel of leadership.